Remember, we're on
What
with other people.
kind of boyfriend did you get?
No, I'm
I'll be,
serious.
I'll be, did you get a new mattress too?
Yes, I finally got a new mattress. I finally got a hybrid mattress. 15 years,
That's
Tammy.
awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We're just waiting for a few more people to join us in the room. Kind of getting back settled. So we'll get started here in just a minute. And we will be recording this second session. So yeah, you all will have access to it. I know it came up a lot in the chat about where folks can have access to this, and it is going to be available on our YouTube channel. It will be available, as also it is available on the website that we will send out to you all, that you all will have access to after this session. So just wanted to give y'all a reminder on that. And then I think we might be good, Santi, to start.
All righty. Let's move right along then. So this last is kind of to wrap things up, to kind of like also give an opportunity to ask any questions that we may not have been able to answer at any point, either last Saturday or today. And in addition to that, we just, again, just want to give you some other little tips. And there was one thing I forgot to do, but I'll do it afterwards. So we're gonna just move on with the additional comment boxes at this point. So Jewel is gonna take that away at this point.
Yeah, so at the end of the application, there are a couple of boxes that give you an opportunity to type in a maximum of 500 words. And I specifically wanted to talk about the additional comments box as well as the enrollment gap. So first, I'll talk about the additional comments box. The additional comment box is definitely not a space where you want to do an extension of your PIQs, right? 350 words for some is a lot, for some it's too little, but this is definitely not that space, okay? It's not that space to do an extension on your PIQs. However, if there is something that you weren't able to address that wasn't applicable to address anywhere else, I do encourage you all to do that. And I will use myself as an example. When I was applying to the UCs, I had a significant amount of W's on my transcripts, and that really made me nervous. Made me nervous. I was like, what are they going to think of me? It's not really about, like, it's not that I'm not a good student, because I am, and my grades show that, but it's just I had a lot going on. As I mentioned before, I was working full-time as a student. So I, would start a class and then get halfway through, and luckily before the W deadline, I would be like, I can't do this. So I had significant, what I considered a significant amount of W's and withdrawals on my transcript. So that's where I put that, right? That's where I put that. So anything else that you feel like may not be a good fit somewhere else, again, not just, to add more words to your PIQs, to your PIQ responses, but something that may not be a good fit there. This is also going to be a good spot for folks to indicate and to talk a little bit about if they've been significantly impacted by COVID-19. This is not to say I was impacted by COVID-19, because we all are. We've all been impacted by this, but this is, and we don't take that. I do want to emphasize that we don't take that part of it lightly. We're all dealing with it, but some of us are dealing with it a little bit harder, right? Some of us have different circumstances that make it so that the situation is harder, and we want to acknowledge that. So this would be a place to indicate that. And I know something may want to add to that. You may have stepped away for a second. Okay. Go ahead.
I'm just trying to find my way through all the tabs that I have open and screens that I have open, and the smell of food from outside, because my family is cooking. So yeah. So COVID-19. Yes, we want to also mention, and I'm going to drop a link right now. There is a there is a publication that UCLA has that will give you further information on what you will need to address, not address about COVID-19. So it definitely has information about coursework that you may have taken during the spring and or summer, this last spring or summer, where you may have taken maybe grades um, pass no pass, or you may have taken coursework, and then withdrawn from it, or whatever it may have been the case. So it has a little bit of advice about how that's going to be reviewed. And it also lets you know that, of course, if there's something that you were impacted by personally, right? So not what all of us are experiencing necessarily, but that there was something more specific about either COVID-19 or the racial climate that we're living in as well. And that, of course, for some of us, we have been living in for a long time, right? Um, if any of those um, I, if any of those things affected you, it's totally fine to talk about them either in any of the questions that we have already mentioned. But in addition to that, if you feel that that's not necessary, you want to take advantage of, those other four questions, and you want to address either, the pandemic or the systematic racism and its impact it has had on you, then this additional box may be the best place to talk about it, to include and to expand upon how that has affected you, impacted you, in whichever way you feel it has. So again, I'm going to put the link on the chat for that. I'm also going to add it to the website, and that's the part that I had kind of mentioned that I forgot to do, but we will include that as well. So this is, again, application advice from the UCLA Office of Admissions. We have gotten also some information from UC Office of the President. I will put the COVID-19 guidelines from UC Office of the President in the website as well. So just keep referring to that website, because I think we're going to continue to add resources and information to that is going to be very helpful to all of you as you're filling this out. We're also in the process of finding out more details about any other ways in which either the pandemic and the systematic racism in the U.S. Um, how that may have impacted either grades or of course the just your livelihood, and in addition to that, of course, maybe your opportunity to be involved in extracurricular activities or not to be involved in extracurricular activities, right? So we're as we're getting information, we're going to be distributing it through our social media, and of course putting it in our website, so that you're as informed as you can as you're applying and as you're going through this process. So yeah, I think that was it for now. Let's see.
I know it's going on in the chat, but one other thing I wanted to mention, just to emphasize this, is no, this section is not required to fill out. It's just meant if you need the additional space to explain something that isn't in your PIQs.
So again, there's 3 spaces, where you can additionally add more if you feel that you need to, and then that you have to. And again, just having worked in the admissions office and having that background, I know that we're able to tell when you're kind of like you know trying to add more that really is not more. It's just you're just not, you're trying to use that space not as effectively as you need to. And I think admissions officers can kind of see through that, because again, just keep in mind that they're reviewing thousands of applications. So the experience that comes with that, I think, again, is kind of the insight that we're giving you, right? Like if you're going to write about, something you already spoken about or something that's very obvious and that you're just using that to kind of like take up more space, it can actually work against you in the sense of like we can tell that you're not really saying anything new, but you're making us read more than we need to. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. Again, admissions officers are people, and I'm trying to give you that insight, like that behind the scenes type of thing, because I've been on that, on that spot, and I just know that if we're able to tell that you're just like, writing a fifth essay, and there's really nothing else that you're really adding that belongs in that space, then that's just not going to be a good thing. So you really want to use that space for what it was meant to be, to really add something that was not anywhere else in the application, that you couldn't explain anywhere else in the application. That's really the reason to use up that space. And again, so there is the comment section at the end of the academic history with the grades, where you have up to 550 characters, where you can talk about your grades. This will be the best place to talk about them, right? Whether you're concerned about W, whether you're concerned, whatever the concern may be about your academic history, this will be the place to talk about it. Okay. As you all said, in the enrollment gap, only if, of course, there were enrollment gaps, right? Meaning that after high school, you did not enroll in a regular term, and regular term for the university means fall and spring, right? So if you, for whatever reasons, did not enroll in any fall and spring term, right? They're not counting summer, they're not counting winter intersession because those are optional, right? But if you had any enrollment gaps, meaning that you did not enroll in any of the regular fall and winter session coursework, then that's what's considered enrollment gaps. Then there'll be, you'll see this appear in your application. And then lastly, as Jewel and we have discussed, there's the last comment section and at the end of the PIQ, where is the fifth, people call it the fifth box. And again, not required. If you have nothing else to say, and that's perfectly fine. You don't have to do anything here. If you feel that there's something that you need to add that you were not able to communicate anywhere else in the application, then this is the box for you, and this is what it was meant for. So
Okay.
again, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Finish your.
I'm done.
I was just going to add to that in terms of the enrollment gap. This box generally generates only when you indicate that in the academic history portion of the application. So I really want to emphasize to pay special attention to the way you're entering your coursework and your terms, because otherwise it can be confusing when you get to that point, even when you're at the point of entering your academic history, you're like, wait, I didn't take a class that semester. So pay special attention to the dates, and please have a copy of your unofficial transcripts from all of the campuses you attended when you're entering that section. It's super important, and it's going to save you a lot of time and energy and effort. So yeah, the additional, the educational gap section is probably only going to come up if it indicates that on your academic history section.
Thank you, Jewel, for expanding on that. Yeah, definitely. And what else was going to say about this? If for whatever reasons you're finding that the dates or something's not matching, sometimes going back to that area where you first entered the college information, right? We ask you about your college, like days of attendance, type of semester grading, all of that. Sometimes that's where you'll find where the information may be entered incorrectly. So thank you for expanding on that. Let's see, what else do we have for you here next? The editing process. And again, I think Jewel said it best. So why don't you say it again, Jewel, like what you said earlier about the editing process, how it can be.
Oh,
A lot.
I was like, what did I say? I said a lot of things. I say a lot of things. So the editing process. The editing process can be as stressful and anxiety inducing as writing the actual things. I
Mhm.
know for me as a writer, and when I'm writing things and I have other people review them, I have the hardest time for a lot of reasons. The first reason is because I spent time and energy and effort, and this is my story. And who are you to come in and tell me that my comma is, this is a bad example, but who are you to tell me that this doesn't make sense? So I wanted to say that and emphasize that it can be very, very stressful and very, very anxiety inducing. And even to even think about that, to give it to somebody else to read. And I want to emphasize that, especially as people of color, in a lot of different ways, and a lot of us as marginalized communities, to share our stories with other people is really, really a lot, because we're not supposed to put our business out there for other people. Like, that's ours. Like, that's the way a lot of us have been raised. And so to give it to someone else can be very, very just emotional, and can cause trauma, and it can just be a lot. Right. So I did want to say that, and to that effect, and it's a point that Santi's probably going to get to in a little bit, but to that point, to give it to someone who you trust with your story, and who is going to understand, in all of the different ways, where you're coming from, but that can also be constructive for you, not critical, but constructive for you. Yeah.
Really good. I'm glad that you touch upon those points, and I think it's really important. I mean, being judged, because that's how it feels, right? When someone is reviewing your responses, you feel like you're being judged, and not only you're being judged on your ability to write, right? But you're being judged on your story as well, right? So you feel like, I mean, it's hard not to take it personally.
Yeah.
I completely understand that. But sometimes it's okay, you know, to get that kind of feedback. And if someone is taking the time to, like, give it to you, and be constructive about it, that's probably a good person that cares for you, that wants you to have a better, you know, outcome in this, right? So I would say that part. Of course, it's not easy. It's hard. I mean, like, I wrote this edit page, and I know I made mistakes on purpose, because I wanted to show you that, that sometimes that's hard, right? And I know that this shouldn't say this is your responses, but this is a mistake I often make because I'm an immigrant, and these sound the same thing to me. Like, to my immigrant ears, they sound the same thing. So I know this should be this, and it's not is, because it's plural responses, right? I know that. And it
I
should be.
think, Santi, I think to that point too, like, I think it's also super important, because coming from the two of us that were English majors, right? And there's this expectation that, as English majors, we know we write the best, and we do all of, we know all the things, right? So I think it's super important that, especially for those who may have, some doubts about their writing skills and their writing ability, to know that this is a process. This is very much the first thing you write should not be the first thing you should submit, is what I always say. And that this is the process. So even for those of us that may have had training in how to write and how to do this work, it's a process for us too.
Yes, most definitely. And sometimes even more painful, I think, for us, I think, because we think we're supposed to know all these rules, and we're supposed to, like, know it really well, and people always call me out on writing this and this. I mean, that's I know a challenge I have. Like, I am also really bad on my prepositions, uh specifically prepositional phrases, like, take this up or take this on. And, like, I don't know which one is it, take this up or take this on. I have no idea. And, like, they sound, both of them sound correct to me, but, I'm, again, I know that's a challenge I have. And I know part of it is because of, being an immigrant as well. Like, on and in and at are all say uh, we use one word in Spanish to do that, right? And so is to me they're interchangeable, but they're not. So again, that's those are the things that you have to know about yourself as a writer, as a storyteller, and that you're okay when someone's trying to help you. Of course, if somebody's doing it in a abusive, cruel way, then no, walk away. You need to walk away from people like that. But if they're doing it in a loving, constructive way, please take the advice. Anytime that someone can give me good feedback and they're doing it in a loving way because they care about me, I'm all for it. Even things that I don't want to hear, which oftentimes is things I don't want to hear. Then and again, to the point that this is your responses. They're not Jules. They're not Cinnamon's. They're not Santi's responses, right? These are yours. So you have to take ownership on that, right? They have to reflect who you are, right? And that's not to say that, if they're not written correctly, you're just gonna leave them, because that's who you are. That's not what we're saying. But they need to reflect in the sense of the content and what you have to say and what you think is important. Then that's important. I may give you advice and you may not necessarily agree with it. I, what can I do? That's it is what it is, and I have to accept it. I mean, it doesn't mean that because you didn't take my advice, that first of all you're hurting my feelings, because you're not. Because you do take on, you do have to take ownership on that. But secondly, I may not know all the facts, right? I don't know everything that you know, and you are the expert on this, right? You are talking about your own life, so you are the expert. You are the one that knows the most about this, unless you're on Instagram a lot and you post a lot of what your life is, and then probably everybody else knows your business as well. But probably you're the expert on it. Okay. So again, you get to choose. Of course, you want to be discerning about who's giving you advice, right? Um, if it is someone who has no experience whatsoever in what admissions or university or this type of work, you want to listen to it. But of course, if you're hearing it from people from admissions office, they're finally the people who are making the final decision. So if you hear from someone from the admissions office, I would take that with a little more weight, right? So again, you do want to be discerning about which advice you're putting more weight on. But at the end of the day, this is all yours. This is your baby, and you get to raise it whichever way you see fit, as long as you're not neglecting it, right? And then lastly, well, not lastly, a couple of other things I want to say about this editing process. I think Jewel kind of mentioned this a bit. Someone who knows you well, right? Someone who knows, like, that you were talking about all these different things that about yourself, but they notice, hey, how come you didn't talk about this, I know this about you, and this is really important. Why are you not saying anything about this, right? They may be able to help you to point to the places where you may even have blind spots, right? Like you didn't even say, wow, that's really, yeah, that's something really important that I should say about myself in the application. So that's the person who knows you well that's going to help you with that. And then you also want to have someone who is objective, because most likely someone who's reading this is someone who doesn't know you, and they'll be able to see the gaps, those places where you kind of assume that people should know, right? So for example, a good example I usually give about this one is when you start talking about maybe a divorce in your family, in your parent, with your parents, and you talk about it, how impactful it was, and I read some of those, and I'm like, but it doesn't tell me like when this happened. It doesn't tell me if it happened last week or it happened 16 years ago. Like there's no indication on that essay that when it took place, and that can have an impact, right? That can, that can make a difference, if it happened last week or if it happened 16 years ago. Like, there is a different way of evaluating that depending on when it took place, and and you can write it either. I'm not saying one is worse, better, I don't know, that than the other, right? Whether it was when you were young that happened, or whether it was just last week. Either way can be impactful, but it would be good to know the type of impact it has on that chronological aspect of it, right? So again, someone who doesn't know, you may say, well, when did this happen, right? And then lastly, of course, someone who writes well. Of course, most of community colleges have learning centers, and I encourage you to take into those. The only thing that I would caution about the writing centers and or English professors or professors as general, is that there are specific ways of writing for specific disciplines, right? And they may be giving you advice based on a discipline. So for example, and I had this argument with faculty in the English department at certain community colleges that I'm not gonna name right here, but that have argued with me. I mean, like vehemently argue with me that students should not write in the I statement, that the essay should not be written from, with the I pronoun, right? And I'm like, yeah, I don't see how that's gonna work. It's gonna be really funny when I get that essay, about Jewel saying, well, Jewel was doing this, in the third, it just makes no sense to me. And again, I have had people argue with me about this and a number of other things. I mean, like, I have presented like a good essay and a not so, no, I don't want to call it good essay, an effective essay and a not so effective essay. And, I say, this is effective, that one isn't. And they're like, no, it isn't. And I'm like, okay. Everyone in the admissions departments of all the UCs have agreed that this is effective and that one isn't. And they still argue with me about it. And I'm like, okay, so the only thing that I'm saying here is be aware that sometimes, even with the best intentions, even with, the authority that people may have, again, this is your response. I know Jewel wants to say something, so please.
I was just going to say, to your point, that just to help you remember this, folks who are writing, it's personal. So how do you not write a personal statement without using I?
Yeah,
So just as a point.
exactly. Yeah, and
No, please use I.
yeah,
Please use I. That's what we're saying. I just saw a
yeah,
question come up in the chat.
yes,
Please
yeah.
use I.
Yeah, yeah, using I is is a must. I don't understand. I don't really see an essay being well written, not written from the I perspective. It has to be from your perspective. And the strongest essays are the ones where you or the I is evident, right? Um, okay. I also want to talk about sample essays, and a lot of people tell me, "Oh, can you give us a sample essay? Can you share that with us? Can you tell me which one was, And I and we can post some of those in the website, but I usually don't like to do that, and I'll tell you why. Um, Usually is because they will read students will read the essay, and then they will try to mimic that essay, even though that may not apply at all to your own experience, right? Even though it may be like totally like not even appropriate for you to mimic that response, but because you get it in your head that that's a good essay, or an effective essay, a lot of students just start like, I mean, like I could tell like how someone read an essay and they try to like follow kind of like if it was a formula, right? Like if it was an equation, like if I do what they did here and they did here and they did here, I'm gonna do the same over here with mine, and I don't know, it's and you know, I get it. I mean, you know, we try to im- imitate what, you know, has been good, right? So I mean, definitely, I understand that part. But you know, again, this is my advice about reading successful, effective essays. You want to understand why they were effective, not mimic what they wrote. So you want to understand what made a specific response be successful in communicating what they needed to communicate and in being impactful in the application process as a whole, right? Remember, this is just part of your application. It has to fit within the rest of your application, right? So again, you know, this is you know, I always go back and forth on this one because, you know, um, kind of like, I don't want to like taint your way of thinking, and give you something that is someone else's voice, someone else's writing, someone else's experience, and sometimes it's hard to like get that out of your head because you're so like, you know, focused on writing something that's effective, right? So anyways, that's my take on the essays. We can hear, I don't know if anyone else has maybe some other. And then, oh, so this is a very like easy kind of like, this is what I used to do when I was in undergrad. Like, again, because English professors will tell us you did not respond to this part of the question, and they didn't sound like that, but in my head they sounded like that. You know, they would say there was this part you left out, and because of that, it's gonna take points away from you, right? It's kind of the same way in these essays. Like, if you know, the questions are not very long and complicated, right? They're very short. I mean, in all honesty, the questions are very straightforward, right? They're not, you know, they're not really like um, long, you know, with part A, part B, and part C, right? It's pretty straightforward. So what I always done is like I would get a highlighter and I would say, you know, okay, this is the part of this question, and this is where I responded to it in the essay. This is that part of the question, and this is where I responded to that part of the essay, right? So it's so I would know, okay, I have responded to it. I know exactly the places where I responded to each part of that question. That there was nothing left to chance. You know, it was like I responded to it, and I can, you know, I can argue with someone about I did respond to it. Right? Maybe it's not the response you were hoping for, but I did, right? So that's just again just one little trick that I learned as an undergrad. Yes.
Something that, so I know there's probably a lot of questions on like how I get started. I've seen a lot of that happening in the chat, and it was a little while ago, but I did want to add to this, answering the question, when you're starting your drafts and starting to getting on paper, two things: write pen to paper, because that idea of sitting at a keyboard and typing it at a blank page is so anxiety inducing, and I think that may be the challenge for a lot of folks here. So I wanted to address that. And then also the other thing I wanted to say was, when I started these essays, I would start with, for example, my intended, for the required question, for example, my intended major is X, Y, and Z, right? And that got me started. That may not be what you turn in, but to get yourself started in that free write journaling exercise, that might be a good way to start. So taking part of the question and answering it in your response. It's just a plain simple idea that you can take.
That's a really good one. I mean, I think.
Hey, can you repeat that one more time? I didn't hear that.
Sure. Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, so I think, like, for example, for the required question, I'm just using that as an example. I took my intended major is XYZ. So mine was, my intended major is English. And then I went into the 5 W's that we talked about earlier. So that was just to get you started. It may not be what you end up submitting, but to get you started in the writing process.
Yeah, I think a lot of times most of us overthink, the questions. Honestly, and I think I said this in the first essay. I mean, the first essay in the first webinar on Saturday. I said I will take a boring response that gives me a lot of great content than a really well written essay that sounds exciting and so flowery and so, I'm like, woo, makes me feel all kinds of different way, but didn't tell me anything, right? So, that's to say, go the simplest route. Don't complicate your life. Don't feel like you have to have like the most amazing first line ever written in the English literature in existence at
Yeah.
this point. That's
And
not what we're looking for. Okay.
can I add to that?
Yeah.
So I do have experience reading these essays, and as an admission reader, each person you get about 5 minutes to read each application. So when you read 1,000, they all start sounding alike.
Mhm.
And I think the ones that I appreciated the most were the ones that were answering the question, and the ones that I disliked the most were the ones that were trying to be poetic. I'm like, this is not your English class. Don't write me poems. This is not the time to try to be creative in that way. And maybe that's just my opinion, but I just wanted you to answer the question. Why are you unique? I mean, everything you've said today has been on point in terms of my experience reading these personal insight questions, but this is not the moment to try something new.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree. And they tell us this in the norming sessions, right? Like when we get norm, right? They call norm sessions. So all the people who are going to read, applications, they all get us into this one room, and they tell us, this is what we're looking for. They like specifically tell us, we don't care about the flowery type of, essay. That's not what we're looking for. This is not, creative writing 101. This is not, poetry 101. This is not none of those things. They actually tell us, in these sessions, they tell us, don't get swept away in, the romanticism of that. You can write me poems if you want to, by the way. So I would definitely take those for me. If you want to write
I
me
have
any,
to.
go for it.
No, sorry, Santi. I keep doing that. I'm sorry.
Oh,
My
go ahead.
apologies. I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to summarize, like I see it in the chat too, right? It's not that we don't care. It's just that we have a lot of applications to get through. So honestly, all of that to say, get to the point. We want to read your essays, and we want to get to know you, but we also want you to get to the point. Like that's as simple as I can say it without being rude.
Yeah.
That's all.
No, that's and it's that's exactly, this is the kind of response that we want. What Jewel just said. She was straight to the point.
Can I add something?
Go for it, Sophie. Yeah, Sophie.
Yeah, like one of the ways you all could do that, because I always read these a lot. Use active verbs. I would go to office hours versus I went to office hours. It really it sounds more confident and it gets straight to the point.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. When you change, I mean, it's so interesting how much an essay changes from the active and the passive voice. Like, so, the way that I usually explain active and passive voice is passive if it's something is happening to you, right? Active is if you are the one doing the happening, right? So passive is, education made me very lazy, right? Education happened to you, right? Active would be not encountering my own story in education made me not be interested in it, right? Now you're active in it. You were active on it, right? So again, it's little things. And again, if you have someone look them over, I think that's where a lot of people can catch some of these things, and they just make the whatever your story is come alive when you see. I mean, it is so interesting, like in our heads, how that happens. And there's studies that show why and how and what have you, and what part of our brain is that being activated, because language is thinking is language, right? So therefore, the way you write it will have an impact on it, right? But in this process, just keep, what I would say to you, just keep it simple. Like this, that's the editing process, right? The writing process is where you write in the passive voice, where you will say this over these, right? Like my mistakes that I always make. That's that's the writing process. And that's totally fine. And if you're calling yourself a perfectionist right now and you're saying, but I have to just write the perfect sentence every single time, stop lying to yourself. You're just procrastinating. Okay, that's all you're doing. You're procrastinating. Just write the sentences as they need to be written at this point. And we can talk about how we can make them really beautiful afterwards, but we need content, which is the last, and should be the first and the middle of all of this conversation is content. That like when in real estate they're telling you location. In these responses, it's all about content. We just want to know more information that would allow us to make a better decision whether you should be the one that's selected over someone else. That's it, right? All right. I think we're almost at the end. Yes, so we have a few minutes for questions. Before we do that, I actually want to go to the other information, actually, because I want to make sure that we cover that and we don't lose that part of it. So this coming Monday, we're going to have one of our first lounges. We're calling it lounges because we hate calling it rooms, Zoom rooms, it just sounds, ugh. We're going to lounge and we're going to have, I'm going to be hosting the first one with some peer mentors. We will post the information in the website, and it is going to be an opportunity for you to come in. And, if you want to just, as you're working on your application, on your, at home or wherever you may be at, and then, maybe a question comes up as you're, filling out part of the application. Kind of think of it like a computer lab, I guess. Or a learning center type of thing, right? Where you just come in. There's no like, we're not gonna be like doing the lecturing part of it at all. We're just gonna like, if you have a question or if there's something that you may not be so sure about, you can ask. Depending on how many people we have available during that time, we'll go at it that way. We'll also have some more like breakout rooms type of thing, where if you have like confidential kind of like questions you want to ask and you don't want to do it in front of everyone, or that some of us, I know I remember myself a gazillion years ago when I was for a freshman at UCLA, how did not like asking questions in front of other people. That's just not something I did. Now people wish I was that way, but too bad. Now they unleash the monster, so I ask questions everywhere. But if you are, if you are the type that maybe don't want to ask questions in front of the group, or you prefer to have a little more intimate conversations, that's kind of what this is going to be for. And of course, it depends on how many people show up at different times. We're going to hope to have a number of these throughout November. And of course, it's going to depend on the number of our peer mentors who are going to be able to assist. And, again, honestly, they have a lot of experience that is even more relevant, I think, in the sense of, my admission process was like a gazillion years ago. So the peer mentors admission process just happened, So the information that they have is really valuable as well. So yeah, so we will have those. Keep an eye out for in the website, because we're not these are not open to everyone. We just cannot, we don't have the capacity to assist every single person. So we're really making it available for those of you who have already participated in the webinars, in the virtual bootcamp. I mean, because we know that you already come. We have prepared you for this already in so many ways. So we know that you're going to be asking the type of questions that are more, you know, based on the information that we have shared up to now, right? In addition to that, hopefully by tomorrow, we'll be able to send out an invitation to those of you who participated in our webinars, asking you to be part of our cohort for this year. And there'll be specific requirements that you will need to fulfill in order to do that. I'm not going to go into all those details because we will send those in writing to all of you who participated in our webinars this last summer. But just keep an eye out for that email that's coming. And again, utilize the group meets from your webinars. I think that's another place where you can reach out to us in a much more intimate way as well, because those are a group of students that you participate in webinars with. And there's folks, a lot of us are in those group meets as well. So we may be able to answer some of those questions through those means. Did I leave anything out? I probably did, but I can't remember.
Not that I recall. No, I think we're good. Yeah. So again, just look out for that email. If you attended one of our webinars in over this past late summer, you'll have specific instructions on that. And within that email, we will also specify about, I know there's a couple questions about how many hours to put for being a CCP scholar. We can also specify that in the email for you all. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our specialty schools. So some of you, as you mentioned, may be applying for our specialty schools, which is like theater, film, and television. It would be nursing. It would be the music, School of Music. So like anything in ethnomusicology and that sort of thing. We have a guide that we've created to give you all the dates and deadlines for when those are due, because those do require supplemental applications, and each one of them requires a little bit different than the other. So that is going to be available. It needs to still be updated. So I do want to be very clear about that. The dates on there right now are 2019 dates. So we are in the process of updating them. The guide of itself will be available to you all so you can see what else is going to be required of you, but the dates are going to be updated within the next like couple of days. I don't want to give you a specific date, but like less than a week. And that'll be available to you all. You can scan this QR code. And if you've noticed, we've been showing you the QR codes quite a bit. So you all can you all can do that with the QR code or the link. And this will be available to you all.
And thank you, Jewel, for working on that. That's her project. That's her doing. And it's like I don't know what other students get better, resources than the students who participate in our programs. I know I'm bragging, yes, but that's because I have something to brag about. And yeah, we have people like Jewel who created this guide, and she's on it. And yeah.
I do want to say that I created the guide because so many students, I saw so many students not being admitted to UCLA and to the UCs because they miss the deadlines, and it's really that simple. So I really want, and it's something that's very easy to forget, very easy to not think about, especially as first generation students, for the majority of us in the room. And so I just want to emphasize that, and I just pay attention to the dates that stuff is due, because that can, for lack of a better phrase, make or break your application and your potential admission to the universities, wherever you're applying. So
Cinnamon, do you want to talk about the evaluation?
It's so funny. I knew you were gonna call on me to talk about this, so I was slowly like turning on my camera. I was like, it's time for them to
Because I know how judgy you are. See.
That's funny. Um, I created the thing that you can use to judge us, the evaluation. So please use this link or take a picture of the QR code. Please let us know how we did. Rate us on YouTube, like my YouTube channel. No, but seriously, please do the evaluation. We actually do read these. Or some of our peer mentors do, and we ask for feedback, like how your feedback was, and we really do take seriously what you have to say. So please, please, please take the time to do this. It really does matter to us what you think. We want to know how we can improve. We want to know how we can best serve you all. We are here to support you. We know that we're not able to answer all the questions in the chat, but we want you to know that we are doing everything we can to support you during this process, and the evaluation will help us better do that, not only for you, but also for students in the future. So yeah.
Thank you. Judges, yes, judges. I also just want to say thank you to all the folks who helped create this. But most importantly, I mean, you know, I have been mentioning that I've been doing this for a gazillion years, and I have. But my gratitude is really to all of those folks who have shared those stories with me and with us, because this is where we learn the most on how to best help you. Really, I mean, that's the experience I have. Really is based upon working with transfer students, and you know, I would not, I would rather not be doing anything else but working with transfer students. That's just what I love to do. So, you know, I'm indebted to all of you in having this experience. So it's not just, you know, of course, the position or having worked in these places, but it really has to do with the type of students that I have worked with, which are, you know, just amazing. And I look forward to continue to working with you all. And I want to say thank you to everyone else who helped in editing and putting all this together, all the different, there's so many different things. I mean, as you can see, there's like all these different like websites and evaluations and all these different things that need to take place in order for us to like be able to do this. It's a lot of details, and I am so blessed to be able to work with my colleagues, and you know, you're all amazing. So thank you for that. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the Q&A part, I guess, but we can just do the Q&A now here at the end, right? Yes. So we're gonna start do the Q&A, and just so you know, we are going to also we're gonna save the chat. We're gonna